There's only a few key principles you need to understand and apply to your dating life and relationship life if you want to start experiencing positive momentum in your dealings with women. Only a few key principles. In my time coaching men and actively dating and having relationships myself, I would say that the most important concept or principle that you must understand is frame. Having a strong frame. Now, what is frame? You probably heard guys in the manosphere, guys who are dating and relationship coaches talk a lot about frame. Frame is essentially the reality that you are bringing the woman into, right? It's the reality that you are creating for the two of you. You are leading the dynamic and you are bringing the woman into your world instead of you doing what a lot of guys are doing nowadays, which is going into the woman's world, right? So it is the reality that you are creating, okay? Now, the problem with this is one, the vast majority of guys don't even understand what frame is. They never heard of the concept before. And even the ones who do understand frame, they don't really understand how to create it, or they just take it so seriously and think about it so much that them caring about it to that degree actually has the opposite effect. It actually makes for a weak frame because they're so invested, if that makes sense. I actually had two clients recently who have just been learning about this concept of frame, and it has helped them a lot in how they are approaching the domain of dating and relationships, especially given the situations that two of them have went through previously. We're gonna get to that in a minute. But before I explain to you the specific situations that my clients went through and how I help them kind of navigate those situations, I want you to get a deeper understanding of frame. So like I said, it is the reality that you're inviting the woman into, but frame can also be broken down into three components. The first component is identity. It is essentially saying, what role are we playing? What role am I playing in this connection? And what role are you playing in this connection, right? The second aspect of frame is the intent, right? What is my intention in this interaction, right? We're not just talking just to be talking. We're not just going with the flow. No, I know exactly what is the reason behind this entire interaction. Not knowing the answer to that question is going to make for you to have a weaker frame in the interaction. And the last component of frame is direction. Where are we moving towards, right? What is the end goal? Where am I taking you with me on this journey? Just you understanding those three components is going to help you immensely when it comes to understanding the frame that you are creating around the interaction with the woman in question. So back to my clients. I have two clients who both shot themselves in the foot tremendously, just fumbled tremendously with their interactions with women. One of them is kind of newer to this world of game and understanding dating dynamics. And the other guy is actually a lot more skilled, but he made a rookie mistake in his connection. And both of these situations happened via text. So the first guy is the guy who has a lot more experience. He came to me with a dilemma with a woman who he met years ago, but he maintained an Instagram connection with her. And recently he discovered that she was single, so he slid up on her story. When he slid up on her story, and this is a very witty guy, he's normally really good with his words. He slid up on her story and asked if she was single or if she was single. You know, playfully teasing her a bit. Was a great opener, I gotta admit, right? It was a pretty good opener. So he said, are you single or are you single? She responded to his message by saying, I'm single, but I thought you were married, which I told him was a great sign, because that line, I thought you were married, is her conveying that she's been keeping tabs on you. She's seen that you posted content or pictures with other women, so she assumed that you were connected, right? So her keeping tabs on you shows that she has some degree of interest. Remember, we always want to deal with high interest women. So he responded to that by saying, if I was married, I would hope my mother would know that. But no, I'm single, childless, and have money to blow. So based on the three aspects of frame, identity, intent, and direction, where do you think he went wrong here? Let's treat this like Dora the Explorer. Where do you think he went wrong? He went wrong with the identity portion. He wasn't being thoughtful about the identity. The line that really messed him up was that last line, which was, I have money to blow on a good time. That's specifically what he said. I'm single, childless, and I have money to blow on a good time. She responded to that by saying, okay, so which city are we going to first? Now, these people were long distance. They're on different parts of the country. There's a considerable amount of distance between the two of them. When he read her response saying, what city are we going to first? He took that to mean that she was implying that she was coming to his city or if he should go to hers. I told him that's not the case. One, she's very quickly heading to logistics. She's not psychologically ready for logistics. So what made her make such a significant jump, given that they don't have any kind of like pre-established strong connection? What made her jump right to logistics? Two reasons. Either she is just bored and in fantasy land, she's just interacting because she's bored, or she perceives that you are Mr. Moneybags due to how you framed yourself in this conversation. And now she wants to see how far she can push it. She's thinking that you're going to take her and yourself on trips and have a good time. But you created this reality for yourself because you said that you had money to blow on a good time. You identified with the role of being like a sugar daddy instead of a man who is just being playful with the woman and having a good time, right? Now, he fucked this up. He fucked this up tremendously. He came to me and said, what do I do in this situation? The only way to recover from you having a weak frame is to put a stronger frame on top of it. So what I told him was to respond by saying, wait, before we get to that, I need to know if you're even a good time first, right? So he went from establishing a frame of, I'm going to provide the financial provisioning for this trip to now I'm assessing to see if you're even someone worth hanging out with, right? So he just recovered from the weaker frame by putting a stronger frame on top of it, by identifying the role as the selector, which we'll get into a little bit later. What are the most helpful frames for you to establish if you're a beginner, right? Near the end of the video, I'll give you insight on that. So he established himself as the selector, right, or the buyer, and established a stronger frame to kind of switch and change the direction, right, and the intent of this interaction. Does that make sense? That's how he recovered with that one. But you understand how he made the very simple mistake, right? A lot of guys make mistakes, especially via texting, because they're responding to how they're feeling to the moment instead of being thoughtful about the reality that they're creating. Just be thoughtful about the reality you're creating. Not even crazy thoughtful, not even saying you have to spend copious amounts of hours thinking about what reality you're creating. Just spending a couple of minutes thinking about what world am I creating for this interaction is going to put you leagues above all the guys who are just responding to the moment based on how they are feeling, right? Because that's how you make mistakes. Now, for the second client of mine who was a bit of a beginner, this client messaged a woman. His opener on Hinge is, you give me the vibe that you're the type to bring home to mother, right? I don't think he said mother. That's weird. You're the type to bring home to my mom or something like that, right? And he basically took that because I told him on dating apps, it's better to leave a comment instead of like. And it's also better to cold read women. So just kind of read their vibe and do a cold read on them, because women tend to really enjoy and like being cold read. That's why they're so into astrology. That's why every magazine or publication that is geared towards women always have some sort of quiz, like, what kind of boss babe are you? Like, women love hearing about themselves. So you can weaponize that by cold reading them. It creates for a more entertaining interaction. So he was actually applying some of the lessons. But the problem with this is he did not understand that women have a dual mating strategy, just like men do, right? There are men who they put in the provider box or the husband or boyfriend box, and there are men who they put in the fun guy box, right? It's always best to be perceived as the fun guy box and then change their mind on the back end that you actually are able to provide safety. Watch my video on spark and safety. I talk more about the two sides of attraction, spark and safety. That's going to be very helpful for you. It's always best to kind of come across as like the guy who gives a lot of spark, right? Or who is fun. And then on the back end of that, make them see that you actually have a lot of safety qualities as well. Like you will be worthy of investing in. That makes you come across as more dynamic. And the more dynamic you are, the more attractive you come across, right? Like I've actually, in my dealings with women in my dating life, they tend to think initially that I may be a fuckboy, and then they see like, oh, he's actually kind and considerate and dependable. I guess he's not a fuckboy, right? It makes them lean in more because they're curious now. Who are you? I kind of miscategorized you. So who are you, right? So my client, his opener was, you definitely give me the vibe that you are the type to take home to mom, right? Now, I asked him, how effective was that as an opener? He told me 6 out of 10 times he would get a good response. So around 60% of the time, women will respond positively to that. And this is what I like to call a false positive, right? Because yes, he's getting a response. Yes, he's doing things good, but this is showing you how there's levels to the game. Because while you're getting women to respond to you and to engage in you in a positive way, you're also making a crucial mistake because you're framing yourself as the boyfriend early on. I asked my client, what is your goal? Is your goal to be in a relationship, or is your goal to just get dating experience? He said that I am open to a relationship, but I do want to get a lot of experience under my belt. And I'm like, you don't want to frame yourself as the boyfriend then early on, because that's going to cap your experience. When women put you in the boyfriend box, the husband box, it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if that's your goal. If your goal is being a husband or a boyfriend, and that's just what you're looking for, you're being intentional, there's nothing wrong with having a woman put you in that box, right? But if that's not your goal, then you are shooting yourself in the foot. You are effectively sabotaging the connection by framing yourself that way, because the way a woman engages the man who she puts in the boyfriend box is different from how she engages the man who she perceives as the fun guy. The fun guy is probably going to take her home that same night or relatively quickly. The boyfriend box, the husband box guy, she's going to make weight because she wants to create a more positive impression on him. It's not out of malice. It's not out of women being evil or anything like that. It's just, okay, I want to take you serious, so I'm more thoughtful about how you perceive me. So I will shift my behavior so you perceive me in a way that is congruent with long-term commitment. I don't care about how the fun guy perceives me. It's more transactional of a dynamic, so I can just have a good time. Do you understand? You do the best of both worlds when you lead with spark and then follow up with safety. Again, if that doesn't make sense with you, watch my video on spark and safety, okay? So it should be the video before this one. So I told him, you are framing yourself as the boyfriend. You're doing the right thing by doing a code read. That's what's getting you a lot of your interactions with these women, gets them to respond. It's a more interesting prompt to respond to, but you're framing yourself, the identity that you are creating around the roles that you're playing is that you're playing the role as her potential boyfriend. And if that's not what you want to do, you are shooting yourself in the foot, okay? So I told him to switch that. I told him to stop leading with the boyfriend energy and to find another way to create an opener, right? Like for me, what I used to do after I would get the women to move off app to text messages, the first message I would send once I got their phone number was, hey, this is your Hinge crush, Marquette, right? I would call myself their Hinge crush. I'm framing myself as her crush. She's the one who is pursuing me. Do you understand? That is the frame. That's the identity that I created around the interaction. These are the roles that we are now embodying, okay? So that's just an easy way to clean that up. Now, like I told you, there are some helpful frames that you want to embody if you're a beginner. Instead of you trying to be super autistic about this shit and overthinking it and thinking that like, if I'm not super intentional about my frame, then I'm going to fail at this. Not necessarily, right? You can ultimately make hella mistakes and still succeed with women. So you don't need to be too critical over this, but there are some helpful frames to get you started. The first frame that you want to embody is the selector. Every interaction you have with a woman is going to establish a kind of a buyer-seller dynamic. The RSD guys talk about this a lot. There's someone who is the buyer and someone who is the seller. There is someone who is trying to sell themselves to the person who they perceive who has the value, right? You want to flip that. Typically, men default to the seller role. They become jesters, right? What clavicular say, jester maxing. They want to perform for the woman in question. Don't do that. You qualify the woman. You have the intent and the identity that you are the one assessing her. Is she good enough for you? You know you're good enough for her, but you're trying to assess, is she good enough for you? And that could be done in a playful way, right? Having the frame of the selector is going to help you a lot. Another frame that's very helpful is the teacher student. This is something that my client is really good at. The one who framed himself as the boyfriend. He kind of stumbled upon this. He was dealing with a woman who was very interested in the fact that he can play piano. And he was like, I have to give you lessons sometimes. And that created like this playful exchange of her embodying the role as a student and him as the teacher. That's a really good frame because it has inherent sexual tension, right? Whenever you're in a position where you are the dominant one in the interaction, it is inherently sexual because the act of sex in itself is a dominant submission type of game. So if there's a time where you can kind of embody the role as the teacher, meaning that you're highly competent at something that the woman has genuine interest in, and you can frame her as the student, that's going to help you a lot. Another frame is the co-conspirator. Now, the co-conspirator is where you two are having an inside joke or inside connection about around the interaction that you're having. In fact, one text I used to send women if they stopped responding on Hinge was, we're getting a divorce, ... right? And then when they responded to that because they couldn't help themselves, then I would play into this whole co-conspirator thing where it's like, we're already married, we already have kids, yada, yada, yada. And we're ending things. And they would kind of like role play into that as well. And then eventually I would tie that into, I'm with a divorce lawyer. He actually said that we can get back on track. But the only way to do that is if we start dating like we used to. That's how I would convert them to a date, right? So co-conspirators works very well. I remember I was talking to this woman and basically telling her about a date we can go on where we go to a museum and pretend like we are employees, like museum tour guides, right? And just give people just terrible information about the art at the museum, just completely wrong information. And then we kind of had a playful exchange there. Co-conspirators builds a lot of intimacy within the connection. It makes you feel like you're more connected to one another. It enhances chemistry and expedites the development of chemistry. So it's a really good frame to foster a stronger connection with the woman in question, to build a bit more polarity. The last frame is not necessarily one you want to lead with, but it's one you want to default to after you kind of connect with the woman. And that frame is the unbothered man. And you want to adopt the frame as the unbothered man because women are going to test you. They're going to shit test you. And the best way to pass shit tests is to simply be unbothered by them, to not address them head on, to not to breathe life into them, to simply ignore them if they can be ignored, or if they can't be ignored, to minimize the impact. Right? The unbothered man is a good positioning. It's a good frame to embody when women start shit testing you, to test your inner strength, your inner fortitude, to make sure that you are the man that they think you are, right? So those are going to be the helpful frames that you want to adopt. Now, a couple of caveats, right? The first one is a lot of guys who talk about frame talk about it from the perspective of like, you have to always maintain frame. You have to always be the one who has the frame. I get why they say that, right? You do want to be the one who has the frame. The person who has the frame is the person who's least reactive. The person who's more reactive is the person who is in the other person's reality, right? But you don't have to obsess over this shit. Again, obsessing over it paradoxically means you have a weak frame. The people with the strongest frames aren't necessarily thinking about frames. But to develop a stronger frame, you have to be conscious of it, right? You want to go from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence, right? So you don't know that frame is important. So unconscious incompetence. So you don't know it's important, so you're bad at it. Then you become consciously incompetent. So now you know frame is important, but you're still bad at it, right? So you practice it. Then you become consciously competent. So now you know you're good at holding frame. Then ultimately you want to get to unconscious competence. And you really want to have this approach with all of game. Get to unconscious competence, which is, I'm not really thinking about frame anymore or any of the other game principles. I just embody it. It's just who I am. That's the goal. That's where you want to get to, right? So you prevent yourself from getting there when you're like so autistic about the shit that you're always thinking about who has the frame or what's frame am I setting, right? Just think about what frame you're setting at the beginning. I would even say, don't even think about any of this stuff at all while you're in the moment. After the moment passes, after the text exchange ends, after the date ends, you want to reflect and then diagnose what went well, what didn't go well, so that you can course correct for the future, right? The second caveat is like, you don't have to think about this with every test, right? So again, you think about it at the beginning, or better, like I just said, you think about it after the moment passes, right? So that whole idea about going from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence is exactly what I help clients do, specifically with my course, The Retainment Blueprint. The Retainment Blueprint is not just, oh, learn all of these things about women and game and yada, yada, yada. No, that's overwhelming. Guys don't want to be overwhelmed with information. They're tired of how hard this dating shit is. They're tired of how hard this relationship shit is. A lot of guys I talk to are simply exhausted, right? There's always something new to learn. There's always a new strategy, a new approach, a new tactic. It's fucking exhausting. So what I did was I created a course called The Retainment Blueprint. And in The Retainment Blueprint, I simplify this shit for you, right? It covers everything from the first interaction with the woman all the way to maintaining a healthy, happy relationship. So it's the full life cycle. You can go to the course and learn things depending on what phase you are with the woman in question, right? But it simplifies things to a handful of principles that you need to understand, internalize, and embody, again, become unconsciously competent. So you don't have to think about this shit anymore. You start moving through the world like a natural, right? That's the goal. Taking you from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence, where you just embody this stuff. You don't have to think about it, and therefore it's not mentally draining anymore. That's the exact process that I went through, especially when I hired my coach. Now, I don't think about this stuff anymore. People come and ask me like, you know, what are you thinking with this? What are you thinking when you do that? And I'm like, I'm not thinking at all. I'm just responding to the moment naturally, because I have reached the stage of unconscious competence, right? So to help you do that, to sweeten the deal, I'm also offering a free 30-minute coaching call for all customers. So if you purchase the Retainment Blueprint, within 48 hours, you'll get an email from me sending you a link to where you can actually schedule your 30-minute coaching call, where we can actually apply this stuff to your unique situation. All right. So if you want the Retainment Blueprint, if you want to master frame, if you want to understand the handful of principles that would absolutely transform your dating and relationship life, the link for the Retainment Blueprint is in the description below. I'll see you on the other side.